Well, good morning, everyone. It's Thomas Montgomery here. It's a beautiful Friday morning, December 10th, 2021. We are on part two of a two-part training. So if all's going well with technology, you'll see my screen displayed here. On the left-hand side, we have a web page, which we'll talk more about and describe its relevance. And on the right-hand side, we have today's agenda, December 10th, 2021. So we're going to do part two of the advanced training on lead generation. If you missed yesterday's training, I'm just going to do a real quick recap, but I'd recommend that you go back and listen to it so all this makes maybe more sense. But what we discussed yesterday on part one is we talked about the importance and relevance and value of working with key influencers and using webinars to reach their sphere of influence to create your lead flow. And we talked about the 27 Mistakes curriculum, which is found on 27mistakes.org for these simple webinars, less than an hour in length, very educational, but it does a number of things. It provides good factual information and a foundation for the attendees to understand what does it mean to get my business positioned for a capital raise. Secondly, it reiterates multiple times that different sources of capital have different underwriting criteria, so you don't have to have all of it. And thirdly, it creates, in my mind, the perfect blending of here's what you need to know and here's how we can help them. So you can go back and listen to 27mistakes.org if you've not, and imagine how that could help you foster the development of key person policies or cheap business address clients and so forth. We also talked yesterday about some examples of key influencers. And then today is the blending from that background to what is our recommended and what is the best practice call to action after the webinar. Because I can promise you what you and I don't want to do is just go out and teach and teach and teach and fail to monetize it. We want to teach to create familiarity and trust and interest, but we need to pivot them into a client relationship. That way they are moving forward and meeting their goals and you're able to make money. So the call to action is what we're going to talk about today. Before we get to the call to action, I want to go back and make sure that you're well acquainted with the small business certification. So that's what's described here. This is not a new page. This has been here, I think, since the website was developed, but I could be wrong on that. So we're on the iimfl.org small business certification. So let's just go through the website briefly, and then we'll get over to the content on the agenda. So on the website, I think it's great. We've got a little quick YouTube video. I think it's 3 minutes or so. I guess it's not going to show me, but I think it's around 3 minutes, a quick overview on the small business certification. There's a press release that describes it, a flyer that describes it, and an affinity proposal. An affinity proposal is that turnkey document that you can take to key influencers and get their buy-in and offer them a revenue share to help you promote this concept. And then we get on down the page and it talks more about what's covered in each of the 4-week process. Now, as I'll cover a little bit over here in a second, there's no surprise. When clients enroll in the Access to Capital program, they go through this curriculum, right? But maybe what you didn't realize is this curriculum is available as a standalone. So people do not have to enroll in the Access to Capital program. They don't have to promise to work with us to raise at least $100,000. They can just go through this curriculum, further build their financial literacy, build their loan package, and prepare for a capital raise. So again, this is the same curriculum that clients go through with Access to Capital, but it's available on a standalone basis. That's going to be important as we continue our discussion. So if you weren't aware of that, hopefully now you are. So the first bullet is just doing exactly what I just described. And again, we're explaining that this is the same 4-week program as in the Access to Capital program. That the difference is if they just enroll in small business certification, we're stopping after the 4 modules and creating a capital match. So we're not helping them get funding. We're creating a match or a plan for them to do so. We are not promising them any capital raise. This is just simply the educational curriculum and building of the loan package, which in itself is very important. Now, what you and I know is there's probably 2 groups of entrepreneurs. There are those that have a thirst for knowledge and an interest in learning, and this might be a great fit. But quite frankly, there's others that really want nothing to do with that. They just want the end result. They just want capital. So I understand that difference. So in terms of pricing, just to make sure you understand the difference, for someone that's just going through the small business certification as a standalone, and it's reiterated on this page and on the flyer, we charge them 4 payments of $99. So they're paying $99 a week. If you add that up, that's what, $396, just under $400 to go through that. But we have a little bit of a different pricing model as we describe it to the client. So what I mean is, it technically is $2,500 to go through the small business certification. We have a grant allocation that covers $2,101 of it, and so or $104, and so the balance is what the client pays. So this is a $2,500 value, whether they're doing it standalone or if they're going through access to capital, and so that matches up. Again, they would not have a performance fee if they're just going through the certification alone. Of course, if they're doing access to capital, then they don't pay anything up front. There is a refundable deposit of the $2,500 to cover this, but it's collected after their first tranche of capital. And then there is a low performance fee because on access to capital, we're guaranteeing them a capital raise. So what am I trying to do? I'm trying to clarify that small business certification actually exists in 2 different deliverables. It can be standalone, or of course it is and has always been part of access to capital. Just trying to build some familiarity, because we're going to get to what our recommended call to action is after you have these webinars. And as I discussed yesterday, on these webinars, you can teach them or I can teach them for you, and there's no cost for that. But after the webinar, I need you to understand the small business certification as we talk about our call to action momentarily. Okay, so let's move on and kind of hit this nail on the head. So what is it that we recommend? What do we recommend that is done after the informational webinar, which is typically taught without any cost to the attendees, called the 27 mistakes? So, of course, at the end of the webinar, you want to thank them for attending, of course. And then, now you got to listen to this carefully, because we're going to pivot. We're going to make a pitch, and then we're going to pivot. We're going to pitch and then pivot. So first, hear the pitch, and then we'll do the pivot. So the pitch then is, so let's just say all of you just attended my 27 mistakes. And so Ahmad and April and Beatrice and Ben and Bernard and Bruce and Charles and all of you just went through the 27 mistakes. So we're finishing up a Zoom. So I'd say, well, thanks everyone for joining us today. I hope that you found the topic on the 27 mistakes that keeps businesses from being able to access credit and funding to be relevant and useful. Again, don't worry if you don't meet all these criteria. That's what we're here to do. We wanted to today educate you on what those issues are, and then we're here to work with you going forward. And in fact, we have a program called the Small Business Certification that we can assist you with. And what we'll do is we'll go over a 4-week process, 28 days, and build your lender compliant loan package, and we'll actually help you address any deficiencies based upon what you learned just now in the 27 mistakes. I will tell you that the 4-week small business certification training is not free. It's actually $2,500, but we received grant funding that covers most of that. So it ends up just being $99 a week for 4 weeks if you want to go through that small business certification. However, before you go, I want to let you know, and pause and role play. So now we're pivoting. So what we've done is we've taught them about 27 mistakes. They may have some mix of nervousness, realizing, well, maybe there's more to this capital raise game than I thought, but also some excitement that there's a resource available. They just heard the pitch for the small business certification. You really do not want to enroll anyone in the small business certification. We're using that as a platform to get to our pivot. And so then the pivot is we want to, and I'll continue the role play. I did want to let you know, though, that we do have full grant funding to be able to put together your loan package, include you in the small business certification, and we'll work with you to guarantee a minimum of $100,000 capital raise. And that's called our Access to Capital program. So I bet many of you will be interested in that. So pause role play. So what did we do? We educated them regarding the 27 mistakes. We've offered them a small but fee-based option to move forward, which is very logical and valuable. But then we made a hard pivot because we really don't want them to enroll in the small business certification. We really want them to enroll in your Access to Capital program today. And so again, you will clarify with them that the Access to Capital includes the small business certification. So they're getting this without having to pay anything up front, and they're getting a guaranteed $100,000 capital raise. Now, you and I know, and we've talked about it up here, and then it's mentioned here again, we do collect a $2,500 deposit from the client, but after their first tranche of capital, not beforehand. Now, to make this work, you have to have, I believe, and you can maybe prove me wrong, but I believe that you need to have a landing page that you can direct them to immediately after the webinar. And that landing page needs to be set up to have the terms and conditions. You want to allow that warm relationship that you just taught about 27 mistakes to enroll easily and quickly. And that doesn't mean that you pause and you go send them a DocuSign or an Adobe. We need to get them to your landing page, and we need to allow them to go ahead and accept the terms and conditions and move forward. So we've talked about it before. If you have your own landing page, great. If you don't have a landing page, I don't think you're going to see the results out of this strategy that you should and you could. And as I've mentioned, Scott is our Chief Marketing Officer. You can email him and he can help you get that landing page set up. So it's the Access to Capital landing page that you would drive them to immediately after using this pivot that we just discussed. Now, some of you are going to ask, well, what if the client just really only wants the small business certification? Well, that's fine. It's available. We have people enroll in it all the time. So if they want to enroll just in the small business certification, you're going to collect the money from them. Of course, as a white label partner, you keep half for the other half. And either we can do the mentoring through the 4-week process, or you can do it. It's up to you. It's a 50-50 split either way. So let's recap this and then see if there's any questions. So yesterday we talked about some advanced training on lead generation based around the simple concept of working with key influencers and teaching the 27 mistakes as a webinar. You can teach it or I'll teach it for you. We don't charge the attendees. It's a great way to create a funnel. And then today, what we discussed is, what do you do after the webinar? Well, you want to thank them for attending, and you want to make your offer to help them enroll in the small business certification, which provides the 4-week curriculum going through this award-winning topics to help prepare for their capital raise. But with that, there's a cost. It's a minor cost. And so your ultimate goal, again, as highlighted here, is to make a hard pivot away from that. Let them know, instead of spending any money out of pocket, we can actually enroll them in a fully grant subsidized Access to Capital program, whereby they'll still get the same benefits. They'll still go through the 4-week curriculum, but we'll also continue to work with them to raise at least $100,000. And so then you drive them to your landing page. If you don't have a landing page, Scott will help you create one, and most of these people will enroll. Human nature is people will often enroll in the option that has no upfront cost. So you get what you want. You get the client in a more thorough, more comprehensive relationship that's ultimately going to create more value for the client and significantly more income for you. Because now you're collecting $2,500 after the first capital raise for coaching the folks through this process, plus you're getting the performance fee on the back end. Okay. So with that, let's go ahead and address a few of your questions. And as always on Friday, we try to commit to getting out early. So Jeremy asked about the certificate. So yes, we will provide the certificate once the client has completed the process. Because Jeremy, what I said is, we're doing a 50-50 split. You can either do the mentoring if you want, or we can do it as the clients go through the 4-week process. But once they complete it, you can see that they'll receive a certificate of completion. But we'll take care of the certificate for you, Jeremy. Okay, so anxious for feedback. So if you're not generating the lead flow that you need, you may want to start doing more education. The easiest way to educate, and it's more accepted than ever, is webinar-based education. We recommend working with key influencers, as we talked about yesterday, and we recommend using the 27 mistakes, which is found on 27mistakes.org, as the curriculum. You can teach that hour-long presentation, or I'm happy to teach it for you. Either way, there's no cost to you, of course. And then afterwards, what we've been focusing on today is, what do we do afterwards? Well, we want to encourage them to enroll in the small business certification. Let them know that it's grant subsidized, so it's very affordable, only $99 over 4 weeks. However, we do have a fully grant subsidized way that they can go through this at no cost, and that's called our Access to Capital. So they'll still go through this same 4-week curriculum. We'll still build their loan package. We'll still prepare them for funding. But in addition to the curriculum, we will contractually guarantee to help them raise at least $100,000. So you're going to get many people that choose that option, which is your preference as well, because they have no upfront cost. And secondly, they're getting a guarantee of $100,000 capital raise. Who has questions, comments, concerns on this? Jeremy asked, so the small business certification, he's asking if it's on a standalone basis, will it be white labeled? And so if you're teaching it, yes. If we're teaching it, no. And of course, where you'll find the white label information. If we go over, just to explain where I'm at, still on IIMFL, we'll go to the white label page. We get beneath the YouTube videos. And this is where those of you that are white label partners will find the information about each of the 4 modules. You'll have the white label YouTube links. You have access to the participant guides and instructor guides and so forth. So if we're teaching it, it will not be white label. If you're teaching it, you certainly can just brand it under yourself. Great question. Okay, does anyone else have any questions for us as we conclude today's training? We talked about yesterday about creating leads through education. We recommended using the 27 mistakes curriculum. And today we focused on the recommended call to action, which starts with pitching the small business certification, but then you make a hard pivot. So they're making an either or decision. You don't want to give a client or a prospect a yes or no decision. It's how do you want to move forward? Do you want to move forward by getting started in the small business certification today? It's normally $2,500. We've got a grant allocation that covers almost all of that. Your outlay is less than $100 a week over 4 weeks. Or if you prefer no out-of-pocket cost option, we can actually go ahead and plug you into the Access to Capital program. We got a full grant subsidy on the small business certification and the $100,000 guarantee. You get them to your landing page, they enroll, and then we implement as normal. Who has any last questions on this strategy, this technique of generating leads through education and then pivoting them into access to capital? And Timothy, you're right. You can't get around the importance of having a landing page, because a landing page is going to allow you to easily move them from an educational prospect to a client. And your landing page, in our opinion, needs to allow them to enroll, agreeing to terms and conditions on your landing page. If you make it simple and easy and quick for them to enroll, many people will do it. The more difficult that you make it, the less likely that people will convert, and frankly, the more effort you'll have to put into it. Okay, any other questions before we break for today? All right, well, we'll see you back Monday morning. Hopefully this was helpful, and we'll get yesterday and today's recordings out as a pair by Monday. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.